Okay, yeah. So hi Amanda, thank you so much for joining us and for
I
supporting PAWA by speaking about your directorial debut feature film, Tiger Stripes. And congratulations as well on its win at the Critics' Week Grand Prize at Cannes. I'm sure that was such an amazing feeling for you.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
Yeah. And so on to Tiger Stripes, just more about the film. I'd love to hear about the significance of the title, Tiger Stripes, what inspired the film, and any interesting stories that you might feel be of interest to our listeners.
I don't know. Okay, I guess we'll start with the title, I guess. Uh I mean, it really started from many years ago, when you start developing a project and you have to have a title for something. And a lot of times, like, people have this work in progress title. And I think initially it was a work in progress where it was just a placeholder for a title. But I definitely knew I wanted to talk about puberty. I wanted to talk about kind of the changes in a young girl's body, but also talking about the wider aspect of not just physical changes, but social expectations and like the social pressures that a young girl goes through when she's growing up. And so it was a play on this idea that at first, tiger stripes is another nickname for stretch marks. And I remember when I was a kid, I was so insecure about finding these stretch marks on my body and like being so absolutely disgusted by it and trying to hide away from it. But from that idea, it became, then I started developing the story further and further, and I knew that I wanted her to turn into a creature. I wanted her to be something beautiful and terrifying, and walk that thin line between ugliness and beauty and terror and magnificence and power. And so then through developing it became very evident or very obvious that I had to play with this idea of a tiger and her becoming this creature that is, tiger related. And so yeah, the title stuck and has been the title for many years, since even writing the script or starting the first idea for the film. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting that you say that because the tiger, obviously is a very revered creature, but at the same time, it's feared and quite misunderstood, I think, and that really showcases itself in the film and in
Yeah,
like
I mean,
manifestations of girlhood as well.
yeah, definitely. And I think it was that kind of also play of like how tigers are like close to extinction, right, in Malaysia. And at the same time it was like, here, there's a story about this young teenage girl who isn't allowed to be herself in the way she wants to be. So it was, yeah, it was just this playful idea of how ferocious she can be, how magnificent she can be, and how dangerous she can be as well. And yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So many like subtle points about girlhood that manifest in Dafan's character. And I wanted to ask next, what does girlhood mean to you, and how did you aim to showcase this in Tiger Stripe? And especially, I remember when I watched it, there was such a focus on social media. How did you tap into this, and what are your own experiences with social media as well?
Well, I mean, I didn't grow up with social media, so I wasn't, smartphones came when I was maybe like in my late teens only, or even like early 20s. I can't even remember. But yeah, I didn't grow up with that. And that was something that I've seen develop really quickly, and how kids are using it. And so it was very early on in the stages of, here I am telling a story about 12, 13-year-old girls. uh of course their lives are on social media, and you can't stop it, you can't control it. That's just how things are communicated now, and how information is being passed along. Communication, how a lot of kids learn things are through a vertical screen. And so I had to kind of input that how they see themselves is through a vertical screen as well. And so that was a very kind of almost outsider view coming from me as the storyteller, and kind of a look at how they're communicating, how they see their bodies, how they see themselves grow, how they see themselves in the world, how their bodies are shown in the world as well, is very um, social media plays a huge part. But then for me, even writing the script, the girlhood thing was always coming from my own experience, very visceral emotions, very visceral kind of reactions to your body, not just the physical changes, but also the relationships between, friendships, your relationship with school, your relationship at home, those all kind of came through a lot of personal experience, a lot of personal kind of relationships that I saw growing up, and I guess all these relationships are kind of, these issues are kind of still the same. I think a lot of girls go through, so that's a very very huge part of the film. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely related a lot. I went to girls' primary school in Singapore,
Nice.
so there were definitely some moments of familiarity when I was watching the film. And I read in an interview of yours that your move to the UK and feeling out of place might have kind of accelerated or catalyzed this feeling. And it's what led you back to KL to explore this film and create it, and also to create a story about feminine monstrosity. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually felt like an outsider coming back to Malaysia as well, having grown up in UK for many years. And so it was just, I guess that was when I started making films, and when I was back in KL, trying to kind of discover or feel empowered by my own identity. I was in a space where I was told I wasn't Malaysian enough, or I didn't speak like everyone else, I didn't behave like everyone else. I had, yeah, and I just felt like such an outsider, and so it was through making films, and at first short films, and eventually Tiger Stripes, which is my first feature, it strengthened my identity uh, as a Malaysian and also as a woman, and it was always to do with these characters who were these great monsters that were always misunderstood or feared, or kind of ostracized, or kind of pushed away from society, and that was just like my sense of humor, my playfulness with it. I obviously grew up with stories about these Pontianaks and Penanggalans, and these, which are kind of very famous, let's say, spirits or monsters in our local folklore. And so it was nice to kind of revisit that. I've always been a horror fan, but revisiting that and finding that I relate more to these feared female characters was something that excited me, and so I started telling stories about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear about. Folklore is definitely such a great way of exploring. I think in recent times in literature and film, especially for women's identities, which have been really fractured by society as well. And you mentioned about how creating this film strengthened your identity as a Malaysian. And it's very amazing as a Southeast Asian myself to see Malaysian film and the film industry really kind of gain some momentum in the Western world. So, how do you feel about this mainstream release coming in the UK? And if you'd like to talk more about Cannes as well, that would be great.
Um, Feeling really great that, I'm so grateful that the film has been sold to so many, key territories, and one of them being the UK. And of course, having spent so many years of my life, growing up in the UK, it's extra special because it's like a kind of second home. I mean, I studied film in the UK. I was a teenager in the UK. I went to art school in the UK. So it's definitely exciting to know that the film is going to be screened in a lot of the cinemas that I love so much. That I grew up going to and discovering films myself there. So it's kind of a nice, yeah, like a nice return, I guess. Um, but yeah, what else was there? Talk about Cannes. Cannes is crazy, of course. It's another dream come true. It's like a huge goal. I remember, being in film school, and that's always a huge, yeah, like a huge milestone. To have your film selected in Cannes, to be present there, to see the whole place and how it works is really nuts. Yeah, it's exciting. It's very hectic there as well.
Yeah, I can only imagine how hectic and grand the whole thing is. Were there any difficulties from being an art student into kind of seeing or dreaming up your first feature? What were some of the difficulties or challenges you experienced, particularly maybe as a Southeast Asian female filmmaker in the UK?
I think in terms of, I think the biggest challenge that I had was really discovering my own voice. So, like, brush aside, like being Southeast Asian or whatever, I think that's the one thing that I think took a long time to figure out. So I always talk about this idea of, you know, discovering your voice and your identity and how you see yourself in this world. And I think that in itself strengthens who you are and eventually your work, and everything kind of clicks together in what you want to say in your stories. And so yeah, I don't want to pick on like challenges on like small things. Yeah, I've worked on set where I've been bullied and been told like to be quiet, as a woman or whatever. Screw that, like I think it was more working really hard and overcoming these small challenges and keep like fighting for my own voice, keep allowing the time to discover my own voice. I think was a huge thing to overcome. But then once you do it, everything just falls into place. I think you start having a great support network. You start having this clear direction on what you want to do and the stories you want to tell. So yeah.
That's really great to hear. Just Yeah, I think it's such a wonderful thing when you find your voice in your community and find like the confidence to be able to tell a story that you think really matters. And I felt that Tiger Stripes could like really be a classic for a young Asian girls one day, just because it has so many notes of experiences that we all grow up with and have. And it's really nice to reflect on, especially when you're much older. So I guess the last question, we're coming to the end of the interview already. So I'd like to say, what's your advice for aspiring filmmakers or anyone wanting to break into the arts? What are the key messages that you also hope they take away from this film?
Yeah, I mean, jumping off from my previous answer, it's definitely that. I think don't give up, and the most important thing is to know who you are and be super proud of who you are. And I think once you find that pride and that strength, then giving up is not going to be an option for you anyway. And explore everything. It's not just film. Explore all aspects of creativity. I think we're all super creative people, and I think that's the beauty of where your voice can shine is to always work at it, and yeah, and be strong in who you are. I think that's the most important takeaway.
I think that's some really lovely advice to the Power Girls who are usually between 11 to 18, and a lot of them go on to university to do some really cool things that I personally could never have imagined doing. So it's really interesting to see what kind of passions they pursue. And I think that's such a great message. And the last question would be, what's next for you? I think I remember watching the film, wondering if there was going to be a sequel or something, maybe exploring a different feminine monstrosity or um, something along those lines. Are you also explore more on body horror? Um, and are there any other genres that you would like to explore as well?
Um, there will not be a sequel, I don't think, for now. But I think no, I'm working on my next feature film. Very early stages, just writing. So it's like starting from scratch again and figuring out step by step how it's gonna, happen. But no, I'm a horror fan. I'm a big horror person, so still playing with that genre. Still, but I think this time, yeah, we'll have slightly more mature themes. Dealing with motherhood and expectations of family and those kind of structures. But yeah, maybe a bit bloodier as well. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. I'm not such a huge horror person, but I love like Malaysian horror and Indonesian Thai. That's what I grew up watching. And those to me have always been the scariest stories. And it's great to have more of an audience globally be introduced to that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any last comments for anyone watching?
No, I never. Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us, Amanda, and for your amazing words and to hear more about your film. It was really inspiring, and I'm sure it will resonate a lot with PAWA's, the Girls at PAWA supports and even PAWA's volunteers and support network as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.